This is the Ondo station of KAFTAN Television. Welcome from our Abuja studios. Thank you for joining us on D-Day. Of course, it's election day in Edo State, and everyone is excited around there, even beyond Edo State. Election in Nigeria is quite a big deal, and indeed, everywhere in the world, democracy is a big deal anyway. So we're excited to be in your space this day, and we have reporters in Edo State, all over Edo State. Our reporters are Shayo Hamzat and Yetunde Alanamu have been bringing us reports from Edo State since voting started earlier today. And the reports we have, journalists are doing well. The security situation is not bad at all. Voter turnout is not bad. There's rain, but and foreign and local observers are all over the places. Welcome to the Ondo studios once again. My name is Akimumi Abodunde. For this election studio, I have an analyst with me. He's a journalist, he's a university teacher, and a public affairs commentator, Dr. Gbenga Abimbola. Dr. Abimbola, thank you for joining me on Election Day studio.
Thank you. Thank you. All
right. Also, we must tell you that reports will keep coming from Afolashayo and Yetunde as events unfold in Edo State. You know, it's election day. But before we begin to take reports from both of them, I'd like to speak to Dr. Abimbola about a few things. Now, off-cycle elections. Of course, this is an off-cycle election.
Sure.
Let's look at the trend. Because in Nigeria today, there are quite a number of states that do off-cycle election, including Ondo State, where we are. What's your assessment of off-cycle elections in Nigeria?
Yes. Before I go into your assessment, we have to talk about how did we come about off-cycle?
Okay.
It was because of the flaws in the previous elections conducted by INEC, where the court had to upturn some decisions of both the umpire and the lower courts. And so, but before those cases could be concluded, some other people had been sworn in as governors of their states and had occupied space illegally, so to say, some for more than 1 year. So before they were
in fact, some I remember there's a state, there's a sister state, close by, that's Oshun. It was 3 years and a few months.
Yes, so you could see, and when this thing started with Anambra, it was because Peter Obi, who benefited that time when he was contesting for second term, he didn't get it until much later. So when he got it from the courts, and he now had to approach the court to say, I must spend my 4 years. So the Supreme Court now ruled that whoever is returned by the court must start his fresh term on the day, not that he should complete.
So you are either returned by INEC or returned by the courts.
So formally it was expected that if somebody had been there illegally and you are now declared by the court, you should also spend just the rest of the term. But the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, says no. The term that person spent illegally did not exist in law, so he was not there at all. So you should start your own fresh term. That is how we came about. Anambra, Bayelsa, Kogi, Ondo, Ekiti, Oshun, and Edo. So these are the states that were affected, and they are still being affected today.
Absolutely.
Now, off-cycle, for me, I would say that off-cycle elections are no better than the general elections. I'll tell you how. First, although when you draw a comparison, you see some pros and cons. The only area where off-cycle seems to be better is that all attentions are shifted, and that more homework was being done and is still being done by critical stakeholders.
More logistic support.
That is, when I say critical stakeholders, you talk about the umpire, the INEC, security agencies, the civil society organizations, the political parties themselves. So a political party would not be dissipating its energy all over the country if we just face that state alone and deploy all that it could. The Inspector General of Police and other security and sister agencies would deploy more. Then INEC will also deploy more staff. In fact, in these cases, the ad hoc staff, the INEC staff that are deployed are more than INEC staff that are deployed in other general elections.
Yes.
So because they will poach their staff from other states to that. So which means preparation seems to be better, quote and unquote. But the conduct sometimes is like we are the theater of war, where sometimes in some states, this off-cycle, the number of security agencies sometimes are almost near the number of voters, the number of other officials. So all these things, and the do or die affair, the attention the political class, both the candidates and their supporters and their parties deploy, the intensity is like sometimes you now wonder that is it worth it? For me, if I have my way, I would say that the courts should look at a way of taking us back to the same kind of electoral. So
that the general election
should be held at the same time, because that one is better. That will make every state, every political party to have equal chance, equal opportunities. So, but because what we are having now is that once it is all cycle, all the attention, the strength are distributed into that state, and the state will be under trial, so to say.
Okay, you said something that struck me just now. You said the off-cycle elections are not much better than the general elections. Now, that takes me to...
Sorry, let me just add, if you are now talking about corruption, even the more INEC is trying to tighten its loose ends, the more the politicians will be strengthened to even deploy corruption in terms of vote commercialization.
That's one of the things I was going to talk about. Now, you talked about democracy, you already generalized democracy. Since 1999, would you say that we have learned any lessons? I mean, and if we have learned some lessons, have we put those lessons into practice such that our democracy is moving forward steadily and successfully?
Yes, we have learned, and we have put some into practice, because we shouldn't just think that it is all bad and nothing good had come out of our electoral system. I recall in 1999, between 1999 and 2003, even up to 2007, it was like what we call a war, that when parties go into elections, you see violence, ballot box snatching, multiple tampering. Even those who are not even eligible to vote will be tampering, will be voting, and nothing will come out of it. And those votes will still be counted.
Yeah, so remember what late President Yar'Adua said.
Yes, that the election that even brought in was flawed. So now, and that was why the then President Yar'Adua set up a Ways Commission for electoral reforms. So you see that INEC had learnt over the years. So when the issue of multiple thumbprinting, ballot box snatching, so the issue of who votes, is it the person who was supposed to vote that voted, or ghost voters? So INEC introduced card reader in those days. And when card readers could not solve, because politicians, they are always ahead. Even the more INEC is trying to put up some measures, politicians, desperate politicians, they will also be thinking on how to subvert the system. And so INEC now came up with beavers. Now you will see that from that time, you will see the quantity of votes returns reduced. It means that only those who actually voted, their votes counted, and that who voted were supposed to also vote, not ghost voters. If you are not accredited by beavers, you cannot vote, and no such vote could even be recorded, because there are procedure. There's partial deployment of technology has helped that. But you now ask me, has that also called corruption among the politicians? I would say no, because the politicians, they now took their game, they upped their game, and now went further to say, okay, if we cannot bring fictitious people to vote, or we cannot sit down in a corner and thumbprint, let's go and buy votes directly. Let's make it a market. Let's go to the voters. So they now induce the voters so that they will be able to get something in return. So all these things are telling us that even though we have learned some lessons, but the more we are learning lessons, the more we are putting up measures, more challenges are also emerging.
Okay, so let's look at this attitude, our attitude to elections. I mean the political parties, the desperation. Some would say that it's because political positions in Nigeria are too juicy. Some would say that it's just a quest for power. What is it for you?
Yes, for me, I believe that political positions in Nigeria, they are not designed for service. If they were designed for service, then the reality does not support such designs. We have seen it over the years, especially in this dispensation, 1990 date, that when some, remember the first president from 1999, Obasanjo, he was one that increased the salaries and allowances of political office holders. He was one that created RAMFAC. And so I think that time he took their salary up to 250,000 when even a director or a permanent secretary was not earning up to 50,000 that time. So you could see that was how the trend started, and we are still in it now. But if you take a critical look at political parties, the political parties in Nigeria, they are one. I've said it over and over. I don't think we have political parties, so to say, in Nigeria.
Why?
Yes, because in democracy, there are pillars of democracy. One of the pillars is political parties. Another strong pillar is rule of law. Another pillar is independent judiciary. Another pillar is credible elections. Now, for political parties as a pillar, we have other pillars. For political parties as a pillar, political parties are driven by ideologies. But in Nigeria, pray me, which political party has any ideology in Nigeria? Because if a political party is driven by ideology, those who subscribe to that ideology will be members of that party. And those who don't subscribe to such an ideology will never adhere to a party. But in Nigeria, we have only one ideology. That ideology is personal interest, interest of the politicians. That's why you see somebody, APC today, PDP tomorrow, SDP the other time. So they will be jumping. Now, we'll soon go into our discussion, will soon shift to Edo. And when we start analyzing Edo, you will see that there is only one party in Edo, and that party is the party of the politician. Because the two major contenders in Edo now, PDP and APC, they have the same political family.
Okay.
So now, if we now take a look at it, that why do politicians make it a do or die affair? It is because they are not primarily in the heart of their heart. They know that they are not going there to serve. They know that once they get there, the electorates will be the ones serving them through the public funds.
Can we ever get to a point, or better still, are we moving towards the point where public office will be service?
We are even moving further away from it with the way we are doing now. Both the political class and we the citizens, we are not helping matters. Now, if citizens shamelessly and without any decorum sell their votes for peanuts, how can you demand accountability? That is one. Then the political office holders, they have so structured it, and they dominate both the legislature and the executive, and they have also influenced and infiltrated the judiciary. They have structured it in a way that the masses will never have the upper hand, because they know they make laws. Most of the laws they are making is to also protect their oligarchy in power. So that's why I say we are moving further away from it. The only thing that can make us to come closer to it is when the citizens leave their docility. We are too criminal silence, we are too docile in this country.
If you say docile, what are you expecting from the citizens?
Of course, the political class knows that we have a constitutional provision that allows us to ventilate our anger in a civil manner, non-violent manner. We have a constitution that allows us free speech, that allows us to demonstrate, that allows us to challenge government policies, but we will not, because we are too timid and docile. Nobody wants to be arrested. Nobody wants to be locked up. Freedom is never given, it is taken. But we are not ready to take the freedom. And so look at the policies of the current government in power in Nigeria. That from last year till now, since that this government took over, every policy has been bringing has been causing more pain, more hardship on Nigerians. And the government knows that Nigerians will have elasticity, and we can adjust, and we can adjust to any weather.
We're very happy people.
No, it's not about yes. No. In fact, it's like Nigeria is like a miracle center. that all the theories of politics, theories of economics, they don't work here. So the political class, they know that anything they bring, we can adjust. Who could believe that from 180 naira per liter of petrol as at last year May, that a year after it will be more than 1,000 naira, and heavens will not fall, and we are still adjusting. If it goes to 1,500 naira, I can bet the Nigerians will still buy. So all these things have made it. So the service you are talking about now, yes, it is not about service, because most of these things the politicians are doing is to impoverish us, so that when it comes to the election, we'll be helpless and helpless.
Okay, so let's talk about the people. I mean Nigerians, yes, the electorate. What's your view about the attitude of Nigerians to elections in terms of participation, in terms of holding the elected representatives accountable?
Yes, there are two levels of participation, and at both levels Nigerians have fallen below expectation. The first level is to actually go and vote periodically, so that you can have the opportunity to change or to retain elected officials. I'm choosing my words. I don't want to be talking about leaders again, because I've seen that we don't really have leaders in Nigeria. We have elected officials, because leaders, they have empathy. Leaders have vision, and they lead people, they galvanize people toward that vision
across all political parties
and across all levels. So leaders have the interest of the followers at heart, and they want the welfare and the interest of majority to prevail. But in the case of Nigeria, the people we call the leaders, they are the people who have been elected to service themselves and their cronies. So that is why I said we have elected officials. Now, to your question, if we take a critical look, participation, you see that Nigerians, when we look at the number of PVCs collected, whether the presidential election, gubernatorial election, national assembly election, state assembly elections, the worst is local government. That one is almost dead in Nigeria now. You will see that the percentage of voters, I'm not sure we have recorded up to 30% in the last 10 years in any election in Nigeria. 30% of those who collected PVCs, not those just registered, 30%, whether presidential or governorship election. Where do you call that? It means that only it is the minority that are deciding. I will say democracy is about majority. It's the government of the people. But my brother, who's a professor of political science, redefined Nigeria democracy. He said it is the government of OFF, of the people, BUY, by the people, then, and FORC, force the people. Now, so Nigerians, we don't really come out, especially the elite. They know how to talk, they know how to criticize. On the day of the election, they will sit down in the corner of their rooms, reading newspapers, watching television, monitoring this, what we are discussing here. They don't go, many of them don't go beyond that. They won't go and stay in the sun or in the rain to vote. That is the first level. So the participation is low. The second level of participation is holding elected officials accountable even after they have been elected. That one is zero in Nigeria. Since in this democracy, how many people have been recalled? That the electorate said, we made a mistake by electing you. What we thought you would do for us, you promised, or you are not doing it. Please come back. Let's change you. It's enshrined in the Constitution and also in the electorate. But are we doing it? If we don't even ask questions. In fact, the worst part of it is that Nigerians, after we have elected somebody, even if that person is punishing us, we endure till another 4 years. and be waiting. There are some communities in Nigeria that they don't hear of government presence until once in 4 years, and that once in 4 years is where government will go and distribute palliatives to woo them for elections, and after elections, they don't hear about government again. So we don't ask questions.
What is wrong with us as a people?
Yes, leadership. Let us face the fact, because the more we blame the followers, we are just kidding. Everything rises and falls on the leadership, and when we say leadership, we mean leadership at all levels. But we have what we call the apex leadership, that is the national level. Political parties, they have their apex leadership at their national level. Then the government also had its apex leadership at the president and the cabinet. For crying out loud, if Nigerians are asking questions, President Tinubu came to power in a critical period in Nigerian economy and security. He told us that the treasury was almost empty, and we agreed with him. And he said we have to pay more so that government could have money. So that is why he removed subsidy. And yet his lifestyle, when I say lifestyle, the lifestyle of his government, his policy is anti that kind of thing. He's expecting us. How can you expect that somebody who came to power telling us that the purse is lean, and he has appointed the highest number of ministers Nigeria has ever had?
Okay, we'll come
and we could see the luxury of government.
Okay, we'll come to that shortly. Let's look at the performance of the security agencies in elections. You said something earlier, when we started this interview, that between 1999 and 2007, it was election was always like war.
Yes.
And of course, that tilts towards the responsibility of the police force, since the major security agency for elections is the police. Would you say that over the decades, we have moved forward, so to speak, with the security situation around election days?
I would say we have not improved, and the reason is not far-fetched. What is the reason? We have weak institutions, even if they exist. We have strong personalities in Nigeria. Now, take a look at the police we are talking about. How does the leadership emerge in the police? Is it not tied to the apron strings of the president? Nigeria's president is the most powerful in the whole world. I'm not talking of powerful outside Nigeria, but powerful within his country. That everything is the most powerful chief executive you can boast of.
Everything rises.
Every right and falls on him, on his desk. Now, a situation where the president will single-handedly appoint the IGP of police and appoint and fire at will. So who is he going to be loyal to? That is number one. Even the electoral umpire, it is the president that still appoints. So all these things are telling us that, look at what happened in the US 4 years ago. It was because the institutions were strong. That was why the security agencies, the electoral, some critical institutions, they could look President Trump to the face and said, "Oh God, even though you are the president, you are not greater than America. And now we ourselves will obey America first before you," because the institutions over there are strong. If we have strong institutions, do you know the Nigerian police, the influence of the president of the Nigerian police is enormous. But if we blame the president, what about the governors? Even though we are saying we don't have state police, the federal government, that is this warped federalism, pseudo federalism we are practicing. Federal government will take about 60-something% of the entire revenue, and the rest is shared about 56% or so. About 40-something% will be shared by 36 states and the 774 local governments. Here, the federal government will has the police that state governors are funding. There are some commissioners of police that even though they take orders from the IGP, but their loyalty is to the governor, who is funding them directly or indirectly. So all these things, when elections come, you will now begin to see who they will obey, and so we now have frictions. But if we have strong police that is devoid of political control, political influence, that if it is about security matters, they take orders. But once it is about electoral matters, they don't pander to any politician, whether that person is in power. then they will be able to curb some of these issues we are having. So I would tell you that the security agencies, they've not fared better, and you cannot blame them too much. They are still part of the Nigerian society. They are part of us, because the influence that the chief executives, those who appoint them, those who hire them, the influence they weight on them is very enormous. And that is why when election is coming up, the party in power at the center feels that it is right for it to have the police to be on his side against the other party who is not in power at the center. And the party in power at the state, if it is not the party at the center, will be crying foul, as we have in Edo now. And we also want to say it is right to retain power. So what we have now is that politicians, they are all the same. They just want to grab power at all costs, because they know that power is their fastest route to wealth and to their personal interests.
Okay, so before we go to Edo, I want us to look at the conduct of both journalists and observers, both local and foreign observers. Now, in the last elections, there was a report by the international observers submitted to INEC and the relevant stakeholders. What's your assessment of that report? Because at a point there were allegations by the government of the day then that the report was terribly flawed. What's your assessment of
the report or the election?
Of the report.
The report was flawed.
Yes, that was the allegation by the federal government at that time. Now, what's your assessment generally since 1999 of the election observers as well as journalists in this election?
Well, observers, they are also critical stakeholders. Journalists, we are also critical stakeholders. And you know, let me talk about us first. You know, we have a special place in the Constitution. The Constitution has empowered us to uphold the fundamental principles and to also uphold government accountability to the people. How far we have done that is a discussion for another day. But when it comes to the elections, I would say that Nigerian journalists have done pretty well. We may not be 100% perfect.
Are you sure about
Yes, I am sure, because if you take a look at the way, you know...
Or are you being sentimental?
No, I'm not being sentimental. I will tell you, because we have ethics guiding our profession. I'm not talking of ungated media. Ungated media, they don't have any ethical issues. They are free to do and undo. But gated media, the broadcasts and the newspapers and magazines, they have gatekeepers. So now, even though we have ownership influence on our operations, but that ownership influence is still being moderated, especially in the broadcast media that we are now, by the regulators. Whoever you are, the National Broadcasting Commission still has its guidelines enshrined in the NB code. So the NB code is to guide what you do. And if you look at off-cycle and general elections, you will see that broadcast stations still try as much as possible to give a kind of balance. So even though the balance may not be equal on both sides for different parties. Now, what do you want the journalists to report? We don't manufacture news. We report. Reporting means we report what happened, and we also project. Now, the corruption in the society, the corruption in the electoral system, if it is more than the probity, we will report it. So whichever political party is doing activities, we will report. If there are some parties in this current election,
Nigerian media, would you say the Nigerian media has the courage to do what you just talked about?
Yes, Nigerian media has the courage.
The real courage.
They have the real courage. Do you know why I said it? That is why we should thank God for the liberalization of the media industry, media space, especially the broadcasts. Hitherto, 30 years ago, it was only government that controlled the broadcast industry. But now, you now have. So, I as a media scholar, we call it media pluralism. Now, you now have diverse ownerships. That is, if you belong to the left, you have those who own media who are sympathetic to your cause. If you belong to the right, we have those who are sympathetic to your cause. Then the audience will now decide and balance, because the media, they can also be separated from the society. In fact, one of the theories of the media is normative, which means the media mirrors the society. The media is like a chameleon, reflecting what happens in the society. So the courage of the media lies in its power to operate freely. And we have seen it since 1999, even in this democratic setting, that government had tried to clamp down on some media stations. You will see that even after the hullabaloo, the media will still bounce back, and they will still do their job. You cannot tell me that the media have not been challenging the current federal government policies. The media have been challenging the policies through analysis, through news reports, through commentaries, through interviews, and all the rest. And the media has also been reporting those good things government is doing. The same thing with politics. So if elections are on the way, the media's role starts from the build up to the election. That is, first with INEC guidelines, political parties primaries, which in many cases we know that politicians and the Supreme Court has even given the parties too much powers to do and undo. That whatever happens there, if you want to challenge, say you are a meddlesome interloper, that it is their party affair. Even if they didn't do any primary and they present somebody as a candidate, go to court if you like. The Supreme Court will say it is the party affair. What do you want the media to do? The media will still report what happened. So that is that. But if you now come to the observers, I will tell you that where we are missing is that the role of the observers, their role is not, they don't have what we call a enforcement role. Otherwise, they will be termed monitors. I recall that even when I was in the newsroom between 1999 and 2003, and up to 2008, when I left the newsroom for the classroom, INEC will continuously tell us that the observers, they are not election monitors. You know, we used to use that language in the past. We say election monitors. No, INEC will say, because they know the meaning of election monitors. It means if you can monitor, that means you can influence directly or indirectly. They say no, they are only observers. Even if we do evil, let them observe and write their report. There is no law that says we must implement their report. This is where some of these things, and you know, the government has a propaganda machinery, that when government feels that this one does not, every political party does that in Nigeria, because the interest of the people is not the first on their list. Once a party wins election, INEC is the best. INEC has done a very good job. But if that party loses election, INEC they will call the head of INEC for it. They will also even blame the media and blame the security agencies. That is what we do in Nigeria. The same thing with government in power. If government in power felt slighted by the report of the media and observers, they will try and discredit it because of the propaganda machinery that we have in Nigeria. Whoever is in power wields enormous influence. For me, I've said it because you say that all this I'm saying, that what is the way out? The way out is that our destiny is in our hands. We are not yet ready to activate it. I said freedom is never given, it is taken. Okay, when we are ready, because as we see it now, I said, you said, are we inching closer to where we have elected officials coming to serve? I said no, we are even moving further away from it with the trend of things. But the ball is in our hands, it's in our court. We must play the way we like. If people get the kind of leaders they deserve, but I say if people deserve the kind of leaders they choose.
All right. This is election days today. It's the off-cycle election in Edo State, and this is the Ondo station of KAFTAN television. We've been looking at issues around democracy, and my guest has been Dr. Benga Bimbala, university teacher, journalist, and public affairs commentator. In a bit, we'll start taking feeds from the field in Edo State. Afalashayo Hamzat and Yetude Alanono are on ground for us, and they'll soon start feeding us, with the latest in Edo State. But while we wait for their calls, let me quickly return to Dr. Abimbola. Dr. Abimbola, let's go to Edo State. One of the things that has been thrown up with our democracy ever since challenges started was the signing of the peace accord. Unfortunately, one political party said it was not going to sign that accord for reasons best known to it, even though it threw some of those reasons in the public space. I don't want us to talk about the political party in particular, but What's the implication of not signing that peace accord?
Yes, I don't think there is any implication because the peace accord itself does not hold any water for me. How? There is no legal provision for it. It cannot be tendered in the court. It's not a kind of contractual agreement that could be used in the court. Even this peace accord you are talking about, it is only in the off-cycle elections they use it, apart from the presidential election. That's why I'm telling you that off-cycle elections are not even the better for. They are no better than the general elections. During off-cycle election, they will come to a state. November this year now, they will come to those states to sign. Even the states where they have signed, and they say we will accept the result. We are not going to resort to self-help. We won't do this and do that. On the day of the election, into the election, after signing the peace accord, they will still go and cause violence. Those political parties, and nothing will happen. And INEC will be helpless. Because INEC will, yesterday, the REC, the Registered Electoral Commissioner in Edo State, was talking. He was trying to defend himself when on national television a question was put across to him that what of those who are buying votes? He said because they told him that the security agencies have been saying that they cannot arrest any vote buyer, any party that is buying vote or agent of the party that is buying vote, unless INEC official at the polling unit arrest them to so do. The man said, what kind of alibi is that? Should they wait if somebody is killing another person at the polling unit that INEC official must arrest? That the INEC officials are looking at that. You can see he has slightly passed the buck to the security agencies. Yes. It is configured. It's not any better than just what we call selection at the end of the day. Even because, why do I say that? The political parties, they still have what it takes, especially those parties that are well entrenched, to circumvent the system or to make sure that they apply all the sentiments in this world they can apply to their own favor. And so, if you are talking about peace accord, if it were to be entrenched in the Electoral Act or in the Constitution, then it will be binding. Anybody who does not sign will not be able to participate in the election. And if you sign, whatever you do, whatever you have signed, will be used against you.
Okay, but what of the moral implication of that?
Yes, Akumi, say it again. Moral implication. In politics, especially Nigerian politics, is there morality? Nigerian politics is not for morality. In fact, some people define politics that everything is fair in politics. So, the Machiavellian theory of the end justifies the means. The politicians, they don't want to apply moral. They don't think, you and I, we are talking about morality. They don't think about morality. Whatever is going on in their mind is, how do we win this election? What tactics you will deploy, whether fair or foul? So we are talking about morality. That's why I laugh at all these people are called a sign. So except it is entrenched, it has a legal backing. It does not hold water.
But we've done it for quite some years, and there must be a reason why it's not yet entrenched in our constitution. I would ordinarily have expected that since it looks like a good thing, the National Assembly should have done something about it. But it looks like the National Assembly is looking away from that. Why?
Well, the question should be answered by them.
No, but
yeah.
You see,
it depends. The National Assembly we are talking about now, most of the electoral reforms that had happened in Nigeria, did they emanate from them? Many of them were sponsored as executive bills. Some prepared by INEC, some, directly from the president. So how many did the lawmakers themselves bring up and produce and pass and give the president to sign? That is the question. So even the politicians, they know what they are doing. Look at the Electoral Act 2022. You know how much it took the former President Buhari. We will have had it in 2021, but he rejected it. He didn't sign. So he gave instances, and they have to go back and redo until 2022. So that Electoral Act, some amendments in the Electoral Act, sometimes you laugh that even the Electoral Act, why is the electoral act so structured to the extent that it is still giving room? The Edo election we are discussing today, that is holding today now, only this week, this very week, the week of the election, one major political party had its candidate verified by the court. Before this week, as of last week, that political party was not sure of who the candidate was going to be. So what kind of electoral system are we running? That in the week of the election, it is there the court will now say, we approve you to run, to fly the flag of your party. You understand what this is? It's showing that even the electoral, the issue of, look at, they did electoral amendment to the effect that once primaries are done, you now have a long period to the election, and it has not.
So this state, I think INEC announced, that the election will be held today, as far back as September last year.
No, not even September. They announced it more than a year.
That's September
yes, September last year. Now, that announcement, one would have believed that with the electoral act, the primaries that were held in Edo, I think the primaries held around was it February or so?
Yes.
February. Now between February and September.
That's a long time.
Long time. Within 3 months, can't you dispense with pre-election matters and let the parties be sure of their candidates? So, but the electoral are still allowed up till the week of the election for the court to decide finally who the candidate is going to be.
Do you think that all of these challenges you're talking about, you will return to Edo State now, but all of these challenges we've been talking about since we started this conversation, do you think that the constitutional reforms that Nigerians have been talking about for like forever can do anything to actually change some of the things we Nigerians are worried about?
Yes, it will, if we are sincere and we are ready, and those in power, we are sincere and ready. If I said it because I have not seen the sincerity. When I mean sincerity, I mean those who are in the saddle, because they are the ones that will implement. Who are the people in saddle? Those in the executive and those in the legislature. They are the ones that will implement, because we have vested the powers in them, especially the legislature. How do we have a new constitution? The constitution itself, they have introduced, the military had introduced a clause that made it near impossible for any meaningful amendment to be carried out. So when it talks about the 2/3 majority of not just the National Assembly alone, but of the 36 houses of assembly, that one alone is a stumbling block. The other one is that the constitution does not allow you and I to freely air our view on any government policy, whether political or economic, to be able to say we don't want this, we want this.
Well,
referendum. What is freedom of opinion bill? Is not freedom of opinion bill is to allow you have access to public information.
So when you have access to
that does not. I don't really listen. I'm saying for you to be able to decide and force government to do something or to drop an idea.
When you have information, you can then lead conversation.
No, conversation doesn't help.
Why?
If you have a leader who is not ready to listen, then he will not. But if it is a referendum and we say, okay, do we want subsidy or we don't want subsidy? If majority says that subsidy must not be removed, then the president dare not remove. If he removes, he gets impeached. That's what we are talking about. So on any policy, those who drafted the constitution, they have they make sure that that thing was never there. Because all this federalism, true federalism we are talking about now,
yes.
How are we going to have true federalism when the constitution does not allow for referendum? Because they believe that referendum will only lead to separation. No, it doesn't matter. Other countries in the world, they have referendum that any policy, whether economic or political. So there are many things that Nigerians themselves would have even made government to do that would be in our constitution, be a law. We can have, regardless of National Assembly, it would have been easier for us if they have a referendum when Nigerians are saying that this is what we want, or with this one we don't want. But there's no way we can legalize it, make it a binding on government once there is no referendum. And that's why I said, unless we go into true federalism, we are deceiving ourselves. Nigeria constitution is built on fraud. We call it a federal constitution, but in intent and purpose and in practicality, it is a unitary constitution. Because how do you have a federal constitution where states do not have independence in terms of having their own constitution, in terms of conducting their own affairs in terms of having control over their resources. That is not federal. It's not. Education, everything is, the big master is in Abuja. Primary education, up to primary, Kaduna, Kara Namuda in Zamfara State, and Abule Egba in Lagos. They want everything, primary school, to be uniform, the way they run it. That is what we call UBEC. So now, if you come to tertiary education, colleges of education, polytechnics, universities, they have their commissions run by the federal government, and they do accreditation, they legalize everything, issue out commands. I'm just talking of education alone. Go to other sectors of our economy. So in a federal system, it shouldn't be. In a federal system, we should not say that Lagos and Ondo State must be uniform. But what we are having is that uniform thing. But when it comes to average Nigeria, they say federalism. Average worker in Nigeria now, they say you cannot expect somebody in Port Harcourt to be earning the same salary with somebody in Eguso. But even the judges, uniform salary. Okay, so even the political office holders, uniform salary.
Let's go back to Edo State. Do you see the Edo State election, the governorship election holding today, having any impact on the Nigerian state going forward in terms of politics? The outcome of the election, in terms of politics, in terms of the way things are done, in terms of governance and all of that.
It's not going to change anything. I'm not a prophet of doom. A winner will emerge and losers will emerge. And once a winner emerges at the end of the day, maybe by tomorrow, if declarations are made, the winner will thump up for INEC, thump up for president, thump up for the police, thump up for everybody, and the losers, especially real losers, because not everybody is going to this election to win. There are some parties that just want to register their names, but those who really invested, by the time the losers emerge, you will see the other side calling names, calling INEC names. So it's going to be, it's not going to change anything. So we are still, and what is happening in Edo today, it may not be likely different from what will happen in Ondo State here by November, because it's just the actors are the same. The parties, even though I don't believe that we have different parties, but let me agree with Nigeria that there are parties.
Platforms.
Yeah, we have platforms. All those platforms, they are the same, because they are peopled by the same politicians that have their personal interests above the general interest.
One party
of course.
From this party.
No, if you come to Edo State now, if we want to analyze it, you will see that those who are struggling out now, the two major parties now, they are the same. So I can prove it for you. They are the same.
Okay, so let's look at the disposition of INEC to this election. The Edo election, the performance of INEC. There are reports that there was early voter turnout, and that some in quite a number of places, the election officials were on ground. Now, does that say anything about the quality of leadership that INEC now has? In the current leadership of the commission?
Well,
and does that say anything about the conduct of our elections?
It has not. I have told you. The current INEC chairman was the one who conducted last year presidential election. Now, all cycle elections are not justice to judge the performance of INEC, because INEC has all
the elections anyway.
Excuse me, please. Now, election is holding in Edo State today. If you go by what INEC has done, resident electoral commissioners from at least about 10 states will be in Edo. Sometimes each local government is supervised by a rec for a whole state. They will deploy them to Edo State, not to talk about other officials. So do they have the luxury in a general elections? No. So that's why we don't judge by, and you will see that the resources, the attention they pay during general elections, the INEC chairman will he visit all the 36 states, but he will have visited Benin City, Edo State more than twice before today. These are the issues that you don't use that one to judge, because what is the capacity of INEC? Even with that, INEC is still utilizing ad hoc staff.
Okay, so
our election, the way it is configured, we have not really embraced much technology to be deployed to save personnel and to save costs. Look at the volume of papers being deployed, result sheets, ballot papers configured in different colors for different polling units and different rack and different local governments. Look at it, and many of them, unfortunately, many of them are not even printed in Nigeria. You talk about capital flight. Unemployment is here. We use foreign exchange dollars to print. It doesn't stand to reason. And you say we are developing, we are moving forward. Which kind moving forward? With this current, the weak naira to $1, look at how much INEC would have deployed in printing, importing those things. And the security, they will be locking it up in strong rooms. Whereas if we deploy more technology, we will use less of paper. And that one will save cost. And even personnel.
In the run-up to the Edo election, there was Benin City and some parts of Edo State were really hot. Now, I don't want to use the word violence, but there were shades of unrest in Edo State. Now, is it because it's an off-cycle election, or there is something about this election that means more than an ordinary election because of the level of desperation shown by the political gladiators in the run-up to the election? I mean, across political parties.
Yes.
Is this something that Nigerians should be looking at in terms of, outcome of this election?
I have told you what is going to happen today will not be different from what had happened before. 4 years ago, it happened in Edo State. 4 years ago, it happened in Ondo State. And more than 4 years ago, it happened in Ekiti, Anambra, Osun, and what have you. Now, if you are now saying that the red flag, the desperation, exactly. Is it because it's an off cycle? I would say yes. Why? This election now, let me mention parties, but I won't mention their candidates so that I will not be campaigning. You see that the presidential candidate, I will even mention party so that we will not go into campaign. The presidential candidates of the two dominant parties and a third one coming up in Edo State that is giving a good show in this election, and whose presidential candidate also came third in the last election. You see all of them, they focus their attention on Edo. If it were to be general elections, would they distribute themselves to 36 states? Would they have time for the governorship? They will pursue their presidential. That is one. Number two, chairmen of all those parties, they all faced Edo.
No, my focus.
Now, sorry.
My question actually is the heated.
That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. Okay. Now they all faced Edo, and the meaning is that the pressure is on the party at Edo State and the party at the national. The national will put pressure on their party in the state that this is our time, deliver for us, we must win this election. Now, so then the desperation will increase. Because what is happening in Edo State is not limited to the actors in Edo alone. So external actors, that is outside of Edo State, they also play crucial role. Where are you if there to be general elections? Everybody will be to his tent. All these actors that are playing out in Edo, they will be playing their own politics in their respective states and Abuja, as the case may be. So that's why I said all cycle election, I don't see anything better in them, because they bring in more tension, more desperation at the end of the day, because of the weight. We now have what we call balance of terror, the weight that parties deploy. Because if the party in the state cannot do much, then the whole national resources of the party across 36 states are mobbed up, and they are harnessed and deployed to that single state to prosecute just one gubernatorial election. So elections in Nigeria, although sometimes when we blame INEC, I said politicians, they are very much ahead of INEC in plotting how to subvert everything INEC is doing for their own advantage, because they just want to grab power at all costs. So that's why it is our attitude. When we say INEC, who is INEC? Is INEC, are they not Nigerians? But INEC does not also conduct election 100%. It uses Nigerians as field officers, as hardcore staff. And most of these hardcore staff, they also have their own political leanings. Even when they lie that they don't belong to any party, we know that even some of them are sponsored to be adult officials by parties.
Let's come to the judiciary. Now, in every election in Nigeria, there is the dimension of the courts, because once elections are concluded, the Chief Justice of Nigeria appoints a tribunal, and tribunals have played roles. In many cases, the off-cycle elections we now have are partially functions of the tribunals that were created.
Not partially, fully. It was because of
appointed by the Chief Justice of Nigeria. So in our democracy, it looks like the judiciary plays a key role. Would you say that the role of the judiciary has been truly honorable?
That is, I hear a sigh. That is a very deep one. Now, the role of the judiciary has been so honorable. I will not say so, because the judiciary in Nigeria, as we speak now, has been more politicized than before.
Looks like every sector is
politicized.
Because everything I have asked you, I have seen you,
no, that's the truth.
Politicization.
No. Who appoints the judges? How do the judges get to the apex bench? So now, you know that some states, some governors, if they don't have interest in you, you can't get into the bench, and you cannot even go out of the state to go to a court of appeal, let alone get into the Supreme Court. Now, all this, most of the judges, they have godfathers, quote and unquote. So Nigerians know all these things. That is one. Then number two, the attitude of the politicians. They have also corrupted the judges. The politicians have also made the judges to be less honorable. How do I mean? There are some judgments that when you look at it, you will know that this one is a political judgment, nothing more. Sometimes the Supreme Court will even give a judgment, and the Supreme Court will tell in his judgment, he said that this case must never be cited, must never be used as a reference. What is the meaning of that? So all these things, every
decision of the Supreme Court should be cited.
Should be a law.
Should be a law.
But Supreme Court has given some judgments in Nigeria that the Supreme Court said this judgment we have delivered, it must not be cited as a precedent. So these are some of the things we have to talk about, and it is the attitude of the politicians. The judges, they have been overwhelmed. From the High Court to the Supreme Court because of tribunal. Every election in Nigeria is disputed. Abba, what are we looking for? From the primaries, in Edo we are talking about now, just less than a week to this election, one major political party got the judgment delivered, final judgment delivered on the candidacy of that party. So it means even the civil cases, criminal cases, and that's why we are having our prisons more congested, and some people would have even spent more years awaiting trial than even if they were sentenced, than the years they would have spent, because the judges have been taken for tribunal issues, because pre-election matters are disputed, election matters are also disputed, and even after the tribunal might have ruled, it still gets to the appeal to the Supreme Court. Previously, governorship elections and all state elections end at the Court of Appeal, but the politicians, in their wisdom, through the National Assembly, they amended and they took it that governorship election must go to the Supreme Court to end there. And so you now wonder what.
In your opinion, do you think that the governorship cases should end at the appeal court?
Yes, why not? Because the judges at the Court of Appeal, are they not also professionals like their colleagues in the Supreme Court? Most of these all-cycle elections now, they were the product of the Court of Appeal, and that is why, let's face it, since the cases have been going to the Supreme Court now, how many governorship elections has the Supreme Court upturned? Even when the Court of Appeal, this one does not agree with the Electoral Act substantially, when it gets to the Supreme Court, we don't know what will have happened.
Okay, in the last 1 hour, I have been having a conversation with Dr. Benga Bimbala, university teacher, journalist, and public affairs commentator, and we've been looking at the Edo election as well as the Edo governorship election, as well as democracy in Nigeria generally. Dr. Bimbala, thank you very much for talking to me. At the Edo election studio of KAFTAN Television.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
So transmission returns to our Abuja studio. It's still the D-Day for residents and citizens of Edo State. It's the governorship election, and of course every Nigerian is expectant of what will come out from that election. Thank you very much for being a part of the election studio at the Ondo station of KAFTAN Television. Let's join our Abuja studios again.